In this video, we'll be learning how to write the equation of a line into point-slope form. In order to write an equation of a line into point-slope form, we need two key pieces of information. And this is where in math we're very obvious with our naming of things. If we're writing an equation into point-slope form, what we need to write the equation into that form is first, we need a point on the line. And that can be any point on the line, it doesn't matter. And that point we'll call x of point 1 and y of point 1. Then the other piece of information that we need is also right in the name. We need the slope. So in order to write the equation of a line into point-slope form, we will need a point and a slope. Now once we have those two pieces of information, we're going to substitute them into this equation here. And essentially what's going to happen is we're going to take x of our point and we're going to replace it into the x1 spot in point-slope form. Then we're going to take the y of our point and we're going to substitute it into the y1 spot of our equation. And then remember, slope, a fancy letter for slope is m, so we're going to take our slope and we're going to substitute it in for the m slot. So all we're doing is taking these key pieces of information and substituting them into this equation that we see here. So what we're going to do in this example is we're going to write the equation of a line that goes through the points 4, 3, and 6, 6. And we're going to write the equation of that line into point-slope form. So our goal is to put it into this form right here. So we have y minus the y-coordinate of a point on our line equals m, parentheses x minus the x-coordinate of a point on our line. So when we're writing an equation into point-slope form, we know that we need to find a point, which we can see we have two of, so we have more than we need, and we need to find the slope. And since we don't have the slope here, what we need to do is we need to find it by using what we already know about slope. So we already know our slope equation from when we learned how to graph lines. So we have y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So what we're going to do before we write an equation into point-slope form is we first need to find the slope. So here our slope, notice here that I have 2 points up here. So in order to find the slope between those 2 points, I'm going to label them x of point 1, y of point 1, x of point 2, and y of point 2. So I take y2, which is 6, minus y1, which is 3, over x2, which is also 6, minus x1, which is 4. So then I subtract, so I have 3 over 2, and I find that my slope is 3 over 2. So now that I have my slope, I can actually write my equation into point-slope form. The next step after we found our slope is to find one point on our line. And quite frankly, it doesn't matter which point we pick. So you can pick either point. I'm just going to pick the first point because I already have it labeled as x1 and y1. So I'm going to pick the point 4, 3. But remember, you could pick the point 6, 6 as well. Then from here, I'm going to put that into point-slope form. So I'm going to start with my equation here. I'm going to take y minus the y-coordinate of the point I picked, which is 3, is equal to my slope, which I found earlier, of 3 over 2, parenthesis, x minus our x-coordinate, which is 4. So if we pick this point, this will be our equation. Now remember, we also could have picked a different point. We could have picked the point 6, 6, and if we had done that, and then we had substituted it in, it would have been y minus our y-coordinate of 6 is equal to our slope of 3 over 2 times, in parentheses, x minus our x-coordinate, which was 6. So either one of these would work. You could have point 1 or point 2 as long as you take your slope and 1 point and substitute it into this equation. You are writing an equation of this line in point-slope form. So here our goal again is to write the equation of a line in point-slope form. And here I notice they give me a different set of information. They give me m equals 1/2, which remember m is a fancy word for slope. And then they just give me 1 point. And remember, I need a point and a slope to write the equation of a line in point-slope form. So since I have my slope here and I have a point, so I have x1 and y1, I can go and I can write it into point-slope form. And remember, point-slope form is y minus my y-coordinate is equal to my slope times x minus my x-coordinate. So from here, I'm just going to take the values that I have and substitute them in to this equation. So I have y minus my y-coordinate, which is 4, is equal to my slope of 1/2 times x minus my x-coordinate, which is a -3. So notice how I have a minus a negative here. What I do want to make sure I do is make sure I rewrite anytime I see a negative as a plus. So we're going to rewrite this as y minus 4 is equal to 1/2 times, in parentheses, x plus 3 to utilize keep, change. So there we have the equation of a line with this slope and this point in point-slope form. So here again, I want to write the equation of a line in point-slope form. So remember, I need a point, which I can see I have 2, so I'm good there. And then I also need the slope, which I can see I do not have, so I know I will need to calculate. So my slope is going to be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I need to label my points as x1, y1, x2, y2, and then substitute. So I have 1 minus 3, my y2 minus my y1, over x2, which is 5, minus x1, which is 3. So here I end up with -2 over a +2, which simplifies to -1 over 1, or a slope of -1. So here I can see that my slope is a -1. Then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to write the equation of my line into point-slope form. Remember, that's y minus my y-coordinate is equal to my slope times x minus my x-coordinate. And since I have 2 points, I'm going to write this in 2 different ways. So there are 2 possible equations that you could write for me here. The first one, I'm going to use this point of 3, 3. So I would have y minus my y-coordinate of 3 is equal to my slope of -1 times, in parentheses, x minus my x-coordinate, which is 3. So that's one example of an equation that you could have. A second option that you might have is here in orange. So we might use that second point of 5, 1. So same process, y minus our y-coordinate of 1 is equal to our slope of -1 times x minus our x-coordinate of 5. So either one of these answers right here will work as an equation for the line going through these 2 points in point-slope form. So here we have a different representation of a line, and we're going to write its equation in point-slope form. So remember, to write it in point-slope form, we need a point, which I can see I have 2 points here, so I'm good to go. I have 2 options for my points. And then I need to find my slope. And you can either find your slope by doing y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, using the points that you're given, or you can just find your rise over your run from one point to another. So here we're going to go from this point here in orange down to the point in black. To get there, my slope, I need to go vertically down 3, so that's a -3, and then I need to go in the positive x direction 2. So my slope is a -3 over 2. So then what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to write it into point-slope form. Here, for the first point, I'm going to use 2, 3. So I'm going to do y minus my y-coordinate, which is 3, is equal to my slope of -3 over 2 times, in parentheses, x minus my x-coordinate, which is 2. So that's one example of a possible answer that you might have here for the equation of this line in point-slope form. Now if you picked the other point, which I circled here in green, we'd have We'll call that x2 and y2. So our option here would be y minus our y coordinate, which is 0, is equal to our slope, which is negative 3 over 2, times in parentheses x minus our x coordinate, which is 4. So again, remember, either one of these answers will work as the equation of this line in point slope form.